The night was colder than usual. The wind seemed to cut through layers of clothing, and the small bus stop at the corner of Pine Street was almost empty, except for two figures standing silently under the flickering yellow light. One was a young man in his mid-20s, clutching a worn backpack against his chest as though it could shield him from the cold. The other was a woman, elegant yet strangely out of place, hugging herself tightly as the chill gnawed at her frame. Her heels were not made for the uneven pavement, and her thin coat offered little protection from the sharp winter air. The young man noticed her trembling. For a moment he hesitated. After all, she was a stranger. But something inside him refused to let her suffer in silence. He took a deep breath, removed his only jacket, and held it out to her. His voice was shy, almost apologetic. "You look cold. Please take this. I'll be fine." The woman looked at him, surprised. His jacket wasn't new. It bore the marks of years of use. Yet in that moment, it was the warmest gesture she had received in months. She opened her mouth as if to decline, but the sincerity in his eyes stopped her. With a small nod, she accepted it, draping it over her shoulders. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice catching. What he didn't know was that this woman was no ordinary commuter. She was Eleanor Grant, the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, a woman often surrounded by chauffeurs, assistants, and boardrooms. Tonight, however, she had chosen to slip away from the endless layers of luxury and responsibility. After a particularly crushing day filled with betrayals within her team and doubts about her own worth, she had wanted nothing more than to feel invisible for once, to be just another soul waiting for a bus in the dark. But invisibility came with vulnerability. And here, at this bus stop, she met a stranger who offered more humanity than many of the people she paid handsomely to be around her. The young man introduced himself as Daniel. He had just finished a long shift at a grocery store and was saving every penny to pay for his mother's medical bills. Life wasn't easy. His father had passed away years ago, and the burden of responsibility fell on his shoulders. But Daniel didn't complain. His dreams of finishing college and becoming an architect were put on hold, yet he carried himself with quiet dignity. As they waited, they began to talk. At first it was about the cold weather, then about the bus that never seemed to arrive, and finally about life. Daniel spoke about the struggles of working long hours, the challenges of keeping hope alive, and the lessons his mother taught him about kindness. Eleanor listened, almost forgetting her own title, her own wealth, her own battles. His words grounded her. Here was someone who had every reason to be bitter, yet he chose kindness. Eleanor shared nothing about who she really was. To Daniel, she was simply a woman who had missed her ride and looked like she had carried too many worries on her shoulders. They laughed quietly, their breath visible in the frosty air. For a brief time, they were just two human beings finding warmth in conversation. The bus finally arrived. Daniel stood ready to help her on. But when Eleanor reached into her purse to pay for her fare, she realized she had left her wallet at her office. Flustered, she almost stepped back. Daniel didn't think twice. "Don't worry, I've got it," he said, handing over his last few crumpled bills to the driver. Eleanor felt her throat tighten. She knew those bills might have been meant for his dinner or part of his savings, yet he gave them away as though her dignity mattered more. She wanted to tell him the truth right then, to reveal that she could pay him back 100 times over. But she stayed silent. Something about his uncalculated generosity struck her deeply, and she wanted to hold on to that feeling. The following morning, Eleanor sat in her penthouse office, overlooking the city. Her mind wasn't on the stock reports or the pending merger, but on Daniel. She couldn't shake the image of him offering his jacket, or the way he had laughed despite carrying so many burdens. She realized she had lost touch with what really mattered. Her empire was built on strategies, profits, and market shares. But when was the last time she had hired someone based on kindness? When was the last time she had truly seen the people who worked under her, not just as employees, but as human beings with dreams and struggles? She decided then that she would not let their encounter be just a fleeting memory. A week later, Daniel was surprised to receive a letter in the mail. It was neatly typed, with his name on the envelope. Inside was an invitation to interview for a junior architect position at a prominent company. Confused, he wondered if this was a mistake. He hadn't applied anywhere. But the letter was specific, carrying his details and even acknowledging his past academic achievements before he had dropped out to care for his mother. Hesitant but hopeful, Daniel attended the interview. To his shock, the interviewer spoke highly of him, referencing qualities beyond his resume: his resilience, his work ethic, his kindness. Daniel couldn't understand how they knew so much about him. He left the office still puzzled, but with a sense of possibility stirring inside. It wasn't until weeks later, when he officially got the job, that the truth began to surface. On his first day, as he was led into a meeting with the CEO, he froze. Sitting across the polished mahogany desk was Eleanor Grant, the woman from the bus stop, wearing the very jacket he had given her that night. His eyes widened. "You?" he whispered. She smiled, standing to greet him. "Yes, me. I owe you more than just warmth that night, Daniel. You reminded me of something I had forgotten, that leadership is nothing without humanity. You showed me the power of kindness when you had nothing to spare. And I want people like you on my team." Daniel was speechless. A swirl of emotions flooded his chest: shock, gratitude, disbelief. He never imagined that a simple act of kindness could open such doors. But Eleanor wasn't finished. She leaned closer and added softly, "This isn't charity. You've earned this. You have the talent, the drive, and most importantly, the heart. My company needs people like you." The journey ahead wasn't without challenges. Daniel struggled at first, overwhelmed by the responsibilities of his new role. There were moments when his confidence faltered, when the gap between his humble background and the polished corporate world seemed too wide. But Eleanor mentored him, not as a distant CEO, but as someone who genuinely believed in his potential. Together, they faced hurdles: skepticism from colleagues who doubted Daniel's lack of formal degree, tight deadlines on major projects, and the constant balancing act of caring for his mother while learning the ropes. Yet every obstacle only deepened his resolve. Eleanor, too, found herself changing. She made decisions with more empathy, initiated programs to support employees facing hardships, and began to see her empire not just as a company, but as a community. Years later, Daniel stood before a crowd of graduates at his university's commencement ceremony. With Eleanor sitting proudly in the front row, he shared his story. He spoke about the cold night at the bus stop, the importance of kindness, and how a single act of compassion could ripple into a lifetime of opportunity. His voice broke slightly as he ended with the words, "Sometimes the smallest gestures carry the greatest power. That night I thought I was giving away nothing more than an old jacket. But in truth, I was building a bridge to a future I couldn't even imagine." Kindness has a way of coming back to us, multiplied in ways we don't expect. The audience erupted in applause. Many moved to tears. Eleanor smiled, her heart swelling with pride. She had once been the woman who thought power was measured in boardroom victories. Now she knew the truth. Real power was measured in the courage to care, and so their story became a quiet legend in the company and beyond. People spoke of the night when a young man offered his only jacket to a stranger, not knowing she was a CEO. They spoke of how that single act sparked a journey of transformation, not only for him but for her as well. It was a reminder to everyone that you never know who you are helping when you choose kindness. More importantly, you never know how that kindness might change the world, not just theirs, but your own. Because sometimes the simplest acts create the most extraordinary stories.